Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Catherine Nikkel. Catherine is a writer and best-selling author specializing in ghostwriting books, blogs, and emails. She's authored 15 books, including memoirs, biographies, and business books for CEOs, entrepreneurs, and influencers. Catherine is the author of The Lightbulb Moments Journal, an Amazon bestseller. She's been featured in leading publications, including Forbes, Business Insider, New York Weekly, HuffPost, and more. Catherine is a 6-time RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards nominee, which spotlights Canada's most accomplished and impactful women. Drawing upon her 15 years as a social worker prior to becoming an author, Catherine believes everyone has a story to tell. I'm excited to have Catherine on the show today to share how the power of writing has helped her empower others to make an impact within themselves, their relationships, and their communities. And with that, Catherine Nikkel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. And as we were talking before hitting record, you are hailing from Toronto, Canada. And is that your home? Were you born in Toronto?
Yes, born and raised.
All right. So from north of the border, another one of my fabulous Canadian guests. We're honored and pleased to have you here. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise. Thank you again.
Fantastic. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about growing up. What was it like growing up in Toronto? What was your family situation and what was life like?
For sure. I come from a beautiful family. My parents are still together. They'll celebrate, probably close to 50 years at this point. I'm the eldest of 2 daughters, probably the more troublemaker of the 2 of us. But yeah, I just, did all the things that you were supposed to do growing up in Toronto, and everything from snowsuits to going to school, and everything was really always been great. And until I became a teenager, then I decided I was invincible. And it led me to a variety of challenges. But then I found, I never know the right way to say it, to be honest, but I found myself pregnant at 15. And so that was probably the beginning of a lot of changes that needed to happen in my not so invincible life.
Right. Wow. Okay. So you're growing up in Toronto. What was your sort of things that you did in terms of, were you a sports kid or an art kid? Like, what was your music?
For sure. Definitely. I love music. I was not gifted with a voice for singing, that is for sure. But I swam competitively for years. I grew up playing baseball. My dad coached AAA baseball for years and years. So it was just kind of by default, that is what I needed to do. But I loved it, having said that. And yeah, I was definitely involved in a lot of extracurriculars. I mean, I think through grade school, if there was a club to join, I joined it. I was vice president of the student council. I come from a really ambitious family. So it definitely was passed on. Competition and ambition definitely were key character traits for us.
Right on. And your dad, so he was a coach in the Major League Baseball at the AAA level?
No, draft year. So the 15, 16
draft
under 18 teams. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But feeding into MLB, is that how that worked, or?
Yeah, there's quite a few kids, I guess they're grown now.
Right.
But some pretty familiar names. The closer for the Toronto Blue Jays, Jordan Romano, Josh Naylor, and then his brothers that everyone's getting to know through the Cleveland organization. But yeah, among others. Right. Yeah, so definitely some great kids.
Right on. So was your dad, was he home a lot? Does that job require a lot of travel, or was he local in Toronto?
Well, he worked full time as well, but he always worked an early shift. And so he was always home by 2 p.m. So when he wasn't traveling with baseball, I mean, there's obviously a season to that as well. Spring training, they always did down in Florida. So that was a little more chaotic. But otherwise, they had the clubhouse local to Toronto. So my son grew up going there a lot with him. So, yeah. But he was definitely around a lot more than my mom. My mom traveled a lot for her business.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. What business was she in?
Educational publishing.
Okay. What did she
Yeah.
do in that business?
She started as a sales rep and worked herself up to, I'm pretty sure, president at one point, at least VP, but definitely executive
Mm.
positions of big educational publishing companies.
And so did she have a sort of a writing passion? I mean, publishing. So did she have a writing, or was it more, hey, I'm a business person, I'm in sales, and it didn't?
I think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, she majored in English. Having said that, I don't know that writing was necessarily a big component. Education is what she was definitely passionate about, and being able to, facilitate textbooks that made sense for different curriculums. Canada and Australia tend to have very similar education models. So she spent a little bit of short times out there. And then otherwise it was a lot of, to be honest, I don't really know.
Yeah. Right on.
I just knew she was very busy.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay. And so your parents they have a good relationship. You're growing up in this home. You're the elder, right? You've got a younger sister.
I do. 7 years different.
7 years. Okay. So quite a bit different. And you're active, you're playing sports and all these things. And so would you describe kind of like, was your family life was a happy one? You were kind of
absolutely.
Yeah. Idyllic type of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you had the rebellion, or so you start to rebel or something, and you got to those teenage years. Not uncommon, right? Pretty common.
Yeah. I don't, and I can't even tell you what it was. It was just, I have no idea. I mean, we were definitely a stricter household as far as rules and that kind of thing, but nothing out of, looking back. I mean, hindsight's 2020, nothing out of the ordinary. And I had a great core group of friends that just had a little bit more freedom, I guess, is the way I was looking at it. And, I didn't just bend the rules. I wanted to break them all, apparently. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting few years for sure.
Right. So you're pregnant at 15, and what happens in that moment? So you mentioned a son a second ago. So you decide.
Yeah, he's 26 now. My gosh. That was an interesting place. I was still living at home for the first several months, but everyone around just kind of pretended I wasn't pregnant and wasn't happening. And, in fairness to them, I don't know that. I mean, I think they dealt with it the best way they possibly could. It was probably the biggest surprise a parent wants to hear, especially when, they kind of have your life planned out, right? They think you're going to, go on to do all these incredible things. It doesn't mean that I wasn't going to, but it looked very different. And so I did end up moving out into a home for pregnant teenagers. And that was a joint decision. It wasn't, I was being told to leave, or we just thought, let's get me a little bit more support because this is happening. So I lived there for several months. I went to school there as well, which was also a nice bridge, I guess. But I still, went home on weekends and still had regular communication, but had the additional support at that home.
I see. And was that right in Toronto or kind of nearby, or?
Yeah, it was only about a 10-minute drive from where I lived. So it was definitely still, and that was a lot of the decision, made the decision a little bit simpler for everybody, as I wasn't just, going to be hours away or secluded. I still very much had family support.
Right on. What about the dad? Was the dad kind of involved at all, around? Just kind of no.
Yeah, that's a topic we don't talk about.
Okay, fair enough. So, I mean, incredible and awesome from my standpoint. Incredible and awesome that you chose life, right? That you chose made that what would have been likely I'll ask you, a difficult decision, or one that obviously you mentioned people are sort of ignoring the fact that you're pregnant or treating you like you weren't pregnant and just sort of walking around you. Do you remember kind of what that was like in those moments, making that decision?
Before, when I was still living at home, my mom used to post these statistics on my bedroom door that were, teen moms don't graduate high school, or teen moms don't this. And to some people that can sound really awful, but knowing my mom, she just wanted the best for whomever was involved, whether it was me and a child. Adoption was something we talked a lot about. But, for me, it wasn't really a choice. I knew what I wanted to do, what was in my heart to do. And, by her posting those statistics, it was more so, if you're going to do this, you need to defy these odds. You need to,
Mm.
not be a statistic, basically. And knowing my mom and her heart, that's just her logical way of,
Right.
motivating, if you will. So
Sure.
those were conversations that were had.
Right on. Okay. And so once you have your son, then what happens from there? Do you stay in the home that you're in, or do you come back to your family home, or?
Yeah, no, they didn't have any postnatal beds available. So I did stay with friends for the first, oh gosh, not very long, um, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a month. I can't remember exactly. And my parents asked me to move back home. And that was a no-brainer.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, so that was really great. And we were welcomed and, loved and cared for, and
Mm.
nothing felt, we belonged there, for the lack of, a better way of describing that.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Hmm.
Okay. So now you're 16 years old at this point, or?
Hmm.
Okay. And are you
Yeah.
still kind of progressing through school, or what grade?
Oh gosh. Yeah, high school started to look a little bit interesting. So I started getting involved in more correspondence programs, or what we call alternative learning situations. So, sometimes I would only go to school 1 or 2 days a week. A lot of it was done independently, and that just was making the most sense for me, having a child, a baby. I
Mm.
did try going back to regular high school, for the lack of a better word, and I did do it a complete a year doing that, but that posed a lot more difficulty, in a sense of I had a really hard time connecting with people. So it was very isolating. I would listen to people, wondering where they were going to get money to party that weekend, where I was worried about where am I going to get money to buy diapers or
Yeah.
formula, or so it was just that was tricky. I remember being in a parenting class, which I thought, this will be easy breezy for me, and also thought it would be good for me to, I don't know, learn some more things while I'm practically doing it. And I remember then, the culminating assignment at the end of the year was to bring this mechanical baby home. And I said, I can't do that.
Mm.
I have a real baby at home.
Right.
And I didn't bring the baby home. And I remember getting a 51% in parenting because I wouldn't bring, she didn't have the heart to fail me, however. And I just knew after that.
Incredible.
And yeah, it was,
It's incredible and insane, right?
well, there's people that, and it kind of goes back to people pretending that you're not pregnant, or people pretending that you don't have responsibilities, and that this, fake baby, for the lack of a better word, should have taken precedent. It's tricky for people, but it really helped shape decisions for me, whether I was going to continue in that, type of school model. So I ended up finding another alternative program. Alternative programs were, I find, a lot more abundant then than they are now. I think there was a lot of trial and error of what was
Mm.
working for kids, what wasn't. But there was a really great cooperative learning program that I took part in. And they actually gave me a co-op placement in the court system right in Toronto. And that was, I was a bit more of a gopher than anything,
Mm.
but it was such a great experience to be around adults. And I wasn't necessarily working with offenders at that time, if you will,
Right. Right.
but just really learning just different sides of the system and parts of the system. And I was doing that. And then I was in night school trying to finish my high school diploma at the same time, and working part time. So, and
Wow.
being a mom. That's where I say I was really fortunate with a lot of family support, because I wouldn't have been able to do all of the things. But that cooperative placement ended up hiring me the day I turned 18.
Mm.
And so I'm still 2.5 credits shy of a high school diploma.
Right.
But I did go on to earn my social work degree part time while I was working at the court system. So
Oh,
it's been a
fantastic.
journey.
Man, incredible.
Yeah.
So it just, my head goes back to, how a teacher can give a young woman who is literally a parent. You are a parent and you've made this hard choice to be a parent, and she gives you a 51 on the class because you didn't follow some protocol and take a mechanical or fake baby home, because
Hmm.
it's ridiculous because you have a real baby at home that you're caring for.
Yeah.
To do that to a young person who is in the middle of a life trial, right? Is figuring things out every minute of every day. To do that is just despicable. It's just terrible to think this person is actually shaping or being around other young people daily, unfettered. Is just insane to me. Drives me insane to think about it. And incredible that you know, had the strength and fortitude to go through to weather through that, right? To make that. So just God bless you. I mean, I think it's incredible. What an incredible story, and just an incredible display of, you know, that you got it done, right? You did it. You made the hard choice and you did it. The hard choice.
Yeah.
I think the hard choice in the current world that we're in, that would suggest that, you know, that would choosing to end the life of your baby. And again, I am staunchly you know, if it hasn't come clear on my show before, and it likely has, I'm staunchly pro-life. Right? I just believe that there's life there, and in no other circumstance do we say, well, it's okay to kill your toddler, or it's okay to kill your grandma because they're just inconvenient or expensive or whatever else. But we do that with babies. And I think it's because we've so detached ourselves from this reality that this is a baby. This is a human. It's alive. It's growing. And again, this is my view, but I'm
definitely, we definitely have differing views there. I'm definitely pro-choice, and that's maybe a conversation
for another day.
For another day.
Again, I'm thrilled with the choice you made, and thrilled with the fact that you know, again, made a very hard choice in today's world, certainly, and certainly a world 26 years ago would have been, you know, again, probably equally hard to make that choice. And so yeah, incredible. Okay, so now you have your you finish your internship and you go to work. And so at what age are you, I guess, at this point?
18.
18. Okay. So are you still at home? Or are you on your own, or?
Yep. No, I'm still at home.
Yep. Okay. And then, so working in social work, this is kind of the social work period of your life, or?
No, I spent a few years working in different capacities in the court system. I was clerking for a while in traffic court. Then I crossed over to working in the criminal division. So I was handling a lot of criminal record paperwork, people that wanted either were applying for US waivers, they were applying for a pardon. So a lot of that area. And I thought, no, I don't really want to be a paper pusher forever. So I just started applying for different positions within the government. I mean, it's kind of nice once you're in the government. It's easy to move around. Getting into the government is a little bit trickier. But again, I had that internship that opened that door. So I moved to another courthouse and I started clerking in criminal court. And that was very eye-opening. I was never naive to crime that existed, especially in a big city like Toronto. But the court I was at had a really high population of domestic abuse. They had a whole court just for domestic abuse. And I remember sitting, even though I sat through hundreds of different types of trials, those were always the hardest. And because so many of the time, the victim would recant, or you could just see the fear and you could feel the fear, and it was awful. And we kept having the same name show up on the docket, and it was just, he had been charged, I don't remember how many times, 3-4 different times at least, that he was in my courtroom. And you would see the pictures of what had happened, and you would see the fear, and I just felt for this woman, and I thought, I can't sit here, and I don't know what I would do. I couldn't fix it, but I just felt like I was being called to do something more. And the deciding factor, because I was making really decent money for, 20, 21 years old at, I don't know, at the time, 40, 45 an hour, which, I didn't have a high school diploma. I was still doing my degree. Leaving, I got very complacent, even though I was struggling more and more. And this man's name showed up on my docket again. And this time it was for murder. Oh. And that was my deciding day that I could not be there anymore. I wasn't ever going to be in a capacity to help there. I mean, clerking had its moments for sure, but that was the deciding day that I needed to do something more. So I transferred back to the original courthouse while I was still finishing my diploma. And the moment I finished school, I just started applying to every youth residential care I could think of. And I chose youth because I felt that I had something to give back based on my own experiences and going through gaps in the system and knowing that I really wanted to be the person I wish I had, and that just being someone to advocate for me, someone to just help me navigate so much red tape and hoops you had to jump through. And I just really wanted to give back. So that's why I chose youth residential care. And that's really what started my social work time.
Gotcha. Okay. So youth residential care. So what was that going to involve?
So that was working in a group home. I was working in the capacity of a child and youth worker. We worked with really high risk youth, everything from gang violence to prostitution, human trafficking, a lot of child welfare cases, addiction, mental health. Yeah, it was, again, I was like, I went through from one challenge to another, but this felt different. I was going into their home. I mean, they lived in a group home, but I'd like to call it their home. Just trying to do whatever we could, whether it be life skills or, how to have a job interview or how to behave in public, even, how to have conversations, how to advocate yourself without just losing it, because the truth is, and having, not that I had situations necessarily that I lost it, but I remember getting to like really brinks of frustration as a mom, a very young mom, just wanting someone to listen to me, and really believing that I know what I'm talking about, but you're looked at in such a, unfortunate light in so many ways. So that's, I spent the first year and a half, 2 years working in the group home. And then I transitioned into working in the school programs, same nonprofit agency. But we rented, the first classroom I worked in was actually in the basement of the house I worked in. We had a teacher come in there. And then later I moved out into regular high schools where we rented space. And we would have a classroom of anywhere 8 to 10 youth who had been expelled from the regular school system for a variety of reasons. And that's where I spent the latter part of my social work career.
Gotcha. So the first one, I'm just curious. So when you show up kind of for day one, when you go into that role, number, yeah. So you're laughing. So there is a story there around what day one was like.
I got to the door and all I could hear was someone just absolutely screaming, angry, throwing things. And I remember standing at that door thinking, do I knock or do I get back in my car? Like what did I just decide to do? Because that is not how I pictured my first day. But throw you into the fire and see what you can make happen. So yeah, that was a very scary first day.
So you knocked and went in.
I did.
Yeah. And so what was your role going to be in basically, were you to sort of lead group sessions, one-on-one? And was it free flowing, or were you bringing sort of a curriculum or some sort of a programming that you were leading, or?
Yeah, at that time it was more so, gosh, what's the best way? Really just a matter of keeping them safe. So we were always trying to instill different life skills, whether it be, everything from hygiene to cooking simple meals. We always had best intentions of doing a little bit more, I don't know, I've lost the right word, but something, a little bit more concrete, a little bit more curriculum based or routine, but they didn't need that. They weren't ready for that. And so we really just, a lot of it was led by them to some degree. I mean, a lot of it was just managing rules. It felt really like glorified babysitting in a lot of ways, but I don't even mean that in an ugly type of way.
Sure.
And really just showing up for them, because that, earning their trust was going to be the hardest part.
Yeah.
And, just making them feel included and part of what, it's like, I don't care about your past right now. Let's deal with it right now. And then as that trust builds, they're a lot more free flowing with where they need help or, what triggers them or, being able to do a little bit deeper. So in the group home capacity, I can't speak for others, but the ones that I worked with, you were always sort of designated a primary kid. We used to call it our prime. And those are the kids that we would spend more one-on-one time with, really mapping out what those goals were. We always worked in SMART goals. I feel like they're going to be embedded in me for the rest of my life. And just working through those types of things with them, and helping them see a future. So even though we're really just trying to get them to the next day safely, really wanting them to believe that they do deserve more, and they do deserve to, go on to do incredible things. So a lot of it was just belief.
So, I mean, you're literally kind of bringing yourself to the day, like, okay, what am I going to be helping either my prime with today or whoever with today? And it may be, I'm going to help them cook a meal. How do I behave around other humans? How do I handle my emotions when I get angry? Right. Just life skills.
Or let's just hang out, let's throw on the TV or play a game of cards, just regular, everyday, for what we see as everyday types of things in a home. So really just trying to bring, that healthy normalcy to their lives.
Yep. And you mentioned before that you were making good money where you were. And was this like a pay cut to do what you were doing?
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. No one is in social work for the income.
Right.
At least not over here. No, it was a massive pay cut.
So that's really interesting to me, because you made what is a really hard decision, I think, for anybody to make, but certainly a young mom. You've got a kiddo, and you're like, this job that I'm in, while it's paying me, well, and I'm trying to figure out how to be a mom and raise my son and pay bills, but I don't really feel like this is the job for me. I can't influence change. I'm seeing all these stories that I'm not able to help. So I'm going to make a hard choice. And I'm going to step into a lower paying job where it's chaos and I'm in the middle of it. And I'm still a mom, and I still have bills to pay, and I still have to raise my son, but I'm going to do it because I believe it's the thing that I need to do. That's a massively hard decision to make for anybody, let alone someone that's, dealing with your own, stresses in life. Right.
Yeah. But it was the best decision I ever could have made for myself, because, with that, even though I spent most of my work days, and I work shift work. So that was also, thank goodness for my family, that I was able to work different rotating shifts. But my son had a happy mom then. So even though I was able to leave the chaos at the group home, it doesn't mean you don't take some of the stories home with you. I mean, you do your best. You create a great community, or, people that you can kind of debrief with and unload it, get it out. And then coming home, my son had a happy mom. Versus when I was working, yes, a great paying job, but you're going through the motions, and I couldn't detach because I wasn't able to make any type of change, even if it was just a sliver. I really couldn't there. And it felt like I was contributing to a system that I spent time rebelling against. And so it was tough, but it was the best decision I could have made.
Wow. Awesome. Okay. So now you're doing that. And then what's maybe the situation with your son or at home? And how long does this progress, and when's the next change happen?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I transitioned into the school program because I knew then I didn't have to work rotating shifts anymore. I was Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 3:30. So my son swam competitively. He played baseball. He played hockey. I was able to do those things and be there and be a lot more present. Because when you're working rotating shifts, I mean, everything from, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, overnight, you're kind of all over the place. But so I transitioned to working with the schools because I knew that would create more stability for him. He's in school doing all the extracurriculars, clubs, not so much, sports. Yes. So that was really just great. I loved being a baseball mom and hockey mom and swim mom, and
right.
And we're still at home with my parents too. So,
okay.
We still had, it just worked for us. I mean, there was enough space for everybody. I was able to contribute to the household, with a little less pressure to be, I wasn't, if I was going to be a couple days late paying rent at home, I wasn't going to risk being told to leave.
Right.
And my son we had been there, and he really looked to my dad as a father figure for sure. and, just great relationship with my mom. So we got comfortable there.
Yeah.
Everybody did.
That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. It's awesome that your dad was able to, step into that role, that father figure role, and the
Yeah.
fact that he's a coach or, I guess a coach, and able to get him, coaches some of his sports and take him to sports. That's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Special moments for sure.
So needed, right? And I think young
Mm-hmm.
men, we need role models, and having a father figure is super important. And then physically active. I'm a big believer in physical activity is so great for the mind and the body, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that he was able to do that's fantastic. Okay. So at what point does sort of the writing part start to show up in your life where you have maybe a love of writing, or writing starts to take a place?
Yeah, I'd always just kind of written. I originally started, if I go back even to elementary school, with, little poems. And my teacher actually submitted one. I'm an anonymous contributor to the first teenage Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul. Um, I had no idea she was entering my poem, and there it was. So I think, without realizing, again, hindsight's 2020. At the time, I didn't really know what that was going to instill in me for the future. And, I didn't necessarily love writing essays. I didn't necessarily like, writing about what someone told me to write about. But really just I loved journaling. It started as Dear Diary and then turned into a journal. And then even working through social work, I'd have people saying, could you edit this for me? Could you make this sound better? And I just really loved doing that. So it was something, again, that it was part of my everyday life. It didn't feel like there was no pressure. And I had to go on medical leave in 2015. And I was on medical leave, and I thought, am I ready to go back to the group homes? Do I want to go back into the school programs? I just really wanted to make a change. And I used to always do a ton of networking. I just loved meeting people, and you never know who someone knows or who you can introduce them to. And I met this man. Well, he was around the same age as me, so yeah, he's still a man. I always want to say this guy.
Yeah.
But he was really, really successful in insurance, and I thought, I haven't been motivated by money in about 15 years. Like, maybe it's just time. I mean, I'd accumulated a ton of debt. I was literally living paycheck to 2 days before paycheck. Again, no one is in social work, especially the nonprofit space, for money. So I thought, you know what, maybe I won't go back from my medical leave, and I'm going to be an insurance agent. Oh gosh. Anyway, so yeah, I sat down with a girlfriend at the time, and we enjoyed a bottle of wine and decided that we were both going to quit. She was working similar foster care sector, but similar. And we thought, yeah, we're going to be insurance agents, and, we're going to make all this money. And oh gosh, not one of my smartest ideas, but I quit social work. I didn't go back. September 7th, 2015. And being with this particular insurance company, they send you to a hotel, which is about an hour and a half outside of the city, where you spend the week and you go to school every day. So you're learning different insurance policies, accident insurance, critical illness, things like that, all very foreign language to me.
Yep.
And we're learning it because they're prepping you to write your provincial exam. So we're out there, and I remember saying to my friend, my back is really sore. I had never really had back pain like this. And it got progressively worse over that week. And I thought, something is very, very wrong. But we went home on the weekend. I spent the entire weekend in bed because I thought, maybe it's from, sitting in a classroom again every day and sleeping in hotel beds. I don't know. I mean, you start to justify all of these things thinking it'll just pass. And we went back the following week, because you were there for another week to write your provincial exam. And then they send you into what they call sales school, where they're going to teach you how to sell insurance. Still thinking this is a really great idea. But that Monday morning, I believe it was September 14th, so literally a week after I quit my job and benefits, I thought, I can't even sit. The pain was so excruciating in my lower back that I can't describe it. It was worse than childbirth, and childbirth was not an enjoyable experience. But I wrote the exam in about 30 minutes, which really should have taken me several hours. But the examiner, again, it's those people that you cross in your life. And I said, can I please stand to write this exam? Because sitting is absolutely awful for me. And he said, no, you can't sit, you can't write. And I thought, I've been away from my son and my home and my life for a week. I can't throw it all away now. I can't say, well, because then it would really be all for nothing. So I sat down and I went through that exam as fast as my body. I remember it's making me sweaty even thinking about it. I remember sitting on the edge of the chair, just trying to just ignore the pain long enough. And I submitted it. I had no idea if I passed because I wasn't even feeling confident in writing it. I was just trying to get through it. And I remember going outside and waiting for my friend to finish. And I was just kind of pacing and nothing was helping this pain, nothing. And we went back to the hotel. And that night, I remember doing everything I could possibly think of, from a shower to a bath. I lay on a dirty hotel room floor. I mean, it was a nice hotel, but let's be honest, It's still a hotel room floor. Just anything that I could possibly alleviate the pain. And it was around 4 a.m. I decided I was going to go and sit outside, and it was fall, so it wasn't warm, but I thought I don't want to disrupt her sleeping. And I went downstairs and I just started crying. And I was sitting on the bench outside of the hotel, just thinking, like, I cannot take this anymore. And I ended up getting a text from her around 6 a.m. Said, where the heck did you go? I said, I'm downstairs, but when you're ready, I need you to take me to the hospital. I just absolutely cannot take this pain anymore. And so she got ready, immediately. And we drive to the closest hospital, keeping in mind it's about an hour and a half away from my home. And she said, I said, just drop me off. I said, Canada, yes, we have free healthcare, but it's the most expensive free healthcare. I said, just drop me off. They'll probably just give me something for pain. And, they'll just need you to pick me back up. And I walked into that emergency department that morning, probably around 7 a.m. And within 30 minutes of sitting in the triage area, I was completely paralyzed from the waist down. I lost use of everything, waist down, organs. So you can figure that out. Organs, legs, everything. And I don't remember a whole lot after that because everything started moving very quickly at that point. Normally you're used to waiting in a hospital waiting room for 3, 4, 5, 9 hours sometimes. Yeah. But I was definitely whisked out of the waiting room. I was in the triage area at the time. And I just remember being hooked up to all sorts of things. And, I know I went for all types of scans. And again, I don't remember a whole lot because even though I didn't have any feeling, I was still in excruciating pain. Yeah. As odd as, that may sound to some people, is that. So anyways, that was the universe telling me that I was not going to be an insurance agent. And I ended up undergoing emergency spinal surgery 3 days later. They didn't want to operate at the time because there was so much swelling of the spinal cord. What happened was a disc broke in my back and lodged itself behind my spinal cord. Now, I wasn't lifting anything. I wasn't in an accident. They're wondering, and again, it's speculation because no one will ever actually know, but if I was carrying so much weight, stress-wise, from those years in social service, that it was my body's release. And I obviously had an issue with the disc, but I wasn't having any kind of pain. But because of that type of release, it could be why it happened. Again, we'll never know. That sounds logical, but sorry, that was a really long story for you, how I ended up with writing.
No, that's okay. It's an incredible story. So I thought you were going to tell me, thank God that you didn't, but I thought you were going to tell me you had cancer or some other thing was going on and creating some paralysis. No. So you had, but not necessarily any better, but you had a disc break off of your spinal cord or spinal column and put pressure against the spinal cord, which was causing paralysis and agonizing pain. And so they did surgery to repair that or fix that, or?
Pardon the interruption, everyone. Do you ever feel like you're out of alignment with your true gifts, your passion,
and your purpose for being on this earth? Do you feel like you're grinding it out each week with the appearance of success and still asking, is this it? If so, I get it. I've been right where you're at. And once I figured it out for myself, it's why I started coaching. Now I help my clients get back into alignment with their authentic self. I help them find meaning, purpose, joy, and energy in each day. Check out my website at ericsardina.com to learn more and to schedule a free 15-minute strategy session. And now, back to the show.
They took the disc out and then they fused those two. For me, it's L4, L5, and fused those together. So that was an experience, to say the least. I did have to learn how to walk again because with that paralysis, I didn't realize for sure at the time, and I'd like to think I'm a pretty intelligent person, but you really have to reprogram your brain to tell your body what to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was, retraining that just, I remember standing there the first couple of days after surgery in this contraption that almost looks like a walker, which is as tall as you. And I remember standing there with the physio person and I said, like, my legs aren't listening. And she's like, it's okay. Like, it'll come. We're just worried about one step. And I spent about 5 weeks in the spine unit before coming home. And then coming home was another several months of rehab. And I'm walking. I don't have any issues walking. And there's definitely issues with when you have any type of, traumatic injury to your body like that. But, there's still things that I can work through. So I have about 70% nerve damage through one side of my waist down, my leg, parts of my foot, things like that. But having said that, it was the best thing that could have happened to me at that time. And, when you have a lot of thinking time when you're spending a lot of time in bed.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, like, I can't go out and be an insurance agent. Like, what was I thinking? But I also had bills.
Yeah.
And I started sharing my journey on social media, like many people do, not dirty laundry, but sharing my just what I was going through.
Yeah.
And I had someone reach out to me and said, I really love the way you write. Do you write for other people? And I said, yes. And he's still my client to this day, almost 8 years later.
Wow.
7 years later. And he was really what kickstarted. And not because he was this massively paying client, but he really gave me belief in what I was doing. And I started writing anything I could get my hands on. I wrote for an agency that was doing Amazon descriptions of different affiliate products. And that was all, piecework. So I knew that I was getting paid 2 cents a word. If I could do, X amount in a day, I could earn this. I was earning US currency, which was really great at the time over here. Yeah. Not so much anymore. But definitely that's really what kickstarted the writing.
Wow. That is incredible. Because this was your first paying client. You had, other than that, when he asked you, do you write for other people? You were writing people's emails at work, or you were doing some just small things, but you basically just stepped into it and said, well, yes, I do. And took him on as a client. Did you do you remember what that first project was for? Like what you did for him?
Blog writing.
So you wrote a blog for him?
Yeah.
Did you charge him by the project or by the word? Did you even know how to price it?
I had no idea how to price it. And because there's nothing governing online for writers, I just thought, well, if I go with the median, I'm okay. Now, I won't go too low. I won't go too high. In hindsight, I definitely charged him way too little.
Right.
But you don't know what you don't know. And I just charged him on, a per blog basis at the time. But when he is such a great client, and we just worked so well together. And he just kept saying, I can't believe when you write, it sounds like me. And that's really where I started realizing that I could do more with this. And there were so many parallels from social work to writing that I just never ever considered. Being able to interview someone or pick up on, certain we all have words that we say that we don't necessarily realize that we say them, or the
Yes.
way people say things, or, just really being able to consume people and really hear them. Um, just so our contracts grew really quickly. He ended up putting me on a retainer thereafter, and I've been on a retainer with him since. So
Fantastic. So then within that retainer, you just do the projects that are needed to be done type of thing. So blog posts,
mhm.
whatever else.
Blogs and emails has pretty
Emails.
much been the capacity. He published an ebook, so I was part of that process. And he referred a lot of business to me. So that was really what started to lay the foundation um, for where my business is now.
So when you decide to leave, like this insurance thing's not going to work. Now you haven't been working, not for very long, only for the week, but then your recovery process through the medical, and then you start doing this work. Do you have to do something in between as you're kind of building up that business, or you just sort of focus all in on this writing?
I just focused all in because I knew for years I lived paycheck to 2 days before paycheck. I
Mm.
knew that at the time I was earning just under $2,000 a month take home, and living in Toronto, that is not
Not a lot of money.
that is not an affordable situation. But I knew that I always had in the back of my mind, as long as I can make 2,000 a month, I'm going to be okay.
Mm.
And you just start kind of reverse engineering that. How many clients would that take? And I still had this Amazon description thing I was doing, so I always knew if there were gaps in clients or things like that. I knew I could always lean back on that because I could spend, and I sometimes did spend 13, 14 hours a day writing descriptions for any products you could like.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I felt sorry for anyone that was targeting me on ads anywhere because the things I was researching were just, all over the place. But I knew I was going to be okay. I really did believe that. And, it doesn't mean that there weren't those instances of doubt that I thought, oh gosh, like what have I done? Maybe I should go back to social work. I remember going to a job interview at, it's so comical to me now, but I thought, well, because here, I'm sure you're familiar in Canada, we don't sell liquor in convenience stores or things like that. We have actual liquor stores,
Mm-hmm.
And they're all over the place. So I thought, you know what, they're government, of course they are.
Yeah.
So I thought, their wages are pretty good. Maybe I should pick up some part-time shifts, and that'll, help balance things. And I remember sitting in this interview and just the questions, I thought, no, I am absolutely not doing this. And, I ended up saying to the interviewer, you know what, thank you, but I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, bye. And I just thought, no, I'm really all in. And again, it's those tough choices, but almost making them non-negotiable. So
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the fact that you were, again, you could have made a decision out of scarcity that said, I don't really have the luxury of choosing what I want to do or what feels good. I'm just going to take it. But you stood on like, this isn't a fit for me. This isn't right. This is not for me. And so I'm just going to figure out I'm going to figure out what is. And so see ya, and man, such strength in that, I think so many people, and I could say myself included, it would have been really easy just to go, I'm going to make the tough choice to do this thing that's terrible because I just need the money, right? And I'm just going to make that choice for the money. And then, but then there's all those other offshoots of that, right? In terms of your mental state and your attitude and, all those things when you're in a misaligned, I think, place where you're not called to be, that can show up. And so it sounds like you've consistently showed like, I'm going to make the choice that's right for me, that I feel is the right thing for me.
Yeah.
And that's,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's powerful. Okay. And so you continue to lean into the writing and you're picking up more and more clients. At what point does it become like a big project? Like I'm going to write a book for somebody and ghostwrite.
Yeah. I was at a conference near Niagara Falls, and someone that Gary Vaynerchuk was someone that I just thought I I just felt I resonated a lot with him. Not so much anymore, but definitely in the early stages, as far as, just make it happen, stop making excuses.
Yeah.
And he was one of the keynotes. And so I said to my best friend, I said, you know what, let's just go. We didn't necessarily have the disposable money, had a credit card that had room. Let's just go to this conference. And Gary was great. He didn't disappoint. I had an opportunity to meet him and thank him for what he does. And that was a special moment for me.
Yeah.
And anyways, we were back at the hotel that night because it was a 2-day conference. We stayed over there. And I was standing just outside the lobby at the hotel. And, these couple guys were standing there and talking. And you knew that they were at the conference. And, conference goers like to meet conference goers. And they asked me what I did. And I told them. And they said, oh, my gosh, you have to meet our friend that's here. And I said, okay. I wasn't really following. He's like, he really wants to write a book. And I thought, yeah, sure, I'll meet him and, what have you. And anyways, and they started describing him to me that he was, a 6-time cancer survivor, just had this incredible story to share. He was a venture capitalist, like really successful in his business and businesses. But he was just such a humble, and they just had the most brilliant things to say about him. So we prejudge things, we get visuals in our minds. So I was really anticipating this kind of mild and meek and frail, if you will, man. And this bodybuilder comes down the stairs. And anyways, I met him. He said, I'd love to connect. I understand you're a writer. I really want to write a book. And at the time, I still didn't really know what capacity that was going to be, but I gave him my contact information. He contacted me about a week after the conference and said, will you write it for me? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was honest with him. I said, I absolutely will, but I've never written a book before. So as long as you're okay with that, and if you're not happy with the project, no problem. And he said, no, I want to give you a chance. And so the scariest, yes, but I'm also really happy I was vulnerable with him about it versus, it's kind of like that say yes and figure it out along the way. I didn't want to do that with someone's story. But once he knew my background in social work, which has lended me very well over the years now, is he said, I knew you were the person to do it because there are some really tough things I want to share. So that was a process. I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, the amount of hours I put in, I may as well have been doing it pro bono. Yeah. But he really just became a really, a great friend. And when we were done his book, he was very happy with it. And, the initial plan was to self-publish it, but he had a publishing agency that took a liking to it. So I'm really happy and proud of him for that. But from then on, he said, I think I need to mentor you a little bit in business. And, we'd meet up every now and again for breakfast. And he would say, please don't ever charge that for anyone to write a book ever again.
Oh, really? He knew it was too low.
Oh, yeah. He knew. But having said that, I learned so much through the process. I loved doing it. It really helped me identify gaps that I would never have even know existed. And then, of course, his mentorship thereafter went a long way.
Yeah. One of the questions I want to ask you about, because this comes up a lot on the show, and it's just something that's common, I think, in everyday life, is imposter syndrome, right? People grapple with imposter syndrome. Like, why do I have the right to do this? I don't know what I'm doing. And those are people that have deep skills in an area that are then pushing maybe on the fringes of that area. Like, whoa, I don't have this is new. And yet you were stepping into an area that was really outside of anything you had done before. You're doing small scale writing, some writing of smaller things. And now you're being tasked to write somebody's book that they're called to write. And you're going to be that writer. And you said you sort of vulnerably told them, look, I haven't written a book, but you still talk about, did imposter syndrome show up for you during that process, during some late night writing session where you're thinking, how can I pull this off for this guy?
Yeah. And it still does. I mean, it still exists, but I think it's how we manage that. Initially I just thought I had no business writing his book, but I thought, but I know I can do his story justice. I'm hearing him, I'm feeling the emotion. And I was really still able to be objective. It's one thing I've really learned again through the parallel of social work to writing is that I can be empathetic, but I can still be objective because we have a job to do. And that was one of the things he would continuously say to me, because his story was one of trauma, even long before his first cancer diagnosis. And as we were writing it, he was diagnosed with his seventh cancer. And yeah, just he's just incredible. But, as we're writing it, there were times that he would tell me just really, really vulnerable things. He would look at me and he would be like, thank you, because I didn't react. And it wasn't because it was cold or jaded or anything like that. It's just, we really had a job to do. And for him, that was so important because, when we tell people instances in our lives that are, awful or traumatic or sad or whatever that case is, our human instinct is to say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And that doesn't make us a bad person, but that makes us a great friend. It doesn't necessarily make us the greatest author of our story. So I knew that I could really bring that. And that's really where those instances when imposter syndrome would kick in, I just kept leaning back, and I still do, that it is a privilege that someone has asked me to help them tell their story, to write their story, to put this out there. And I don't take that for granted. So it doesn't change that, we still sometimes wonder, am I the right person for this? And again, that's identifying gaps for me. I really decide in my consult situation with someone if I'm the right person, because there's definitely books that I knew I wasn't. So I don't let imposter syndrome come in those instances.
Right.
So I don't know how much that answered your question, but I do believe I think it's healthy to still feel that, but then it's healthier to know how to manage it.
Yeah, I love that. So if I heard you right, it's almost that notion of, fear or courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to press through fear when you feel it. Right. So imposter syndrome shows up for you, but your anchor is, I'm privileged to be able to tell this story, and I'm going to fight through this feeling of imposter syndrome because this story needs to be told. And I'm the person, and I believe through my interview process and what have you, that I am the right person to tell the story or to help this person get the story out. And so even if I feel like I'm over my head, I'm just going to keep swimming and keep going. Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Fair?
You said it much more eloquently than me. That's exactly what I was saying.
Right. That's awesome, man. I love that. Okay. And so let's talk a bit about, if you don't mind. So I'm curious, I get sort of in the weeds sometimes, but it's like, when you write that first book, is your name on it anywhere, or is no, it's written by him in that. So it just says his name. Okay. Cause I've seen other books where it says, this, and then you see another writer's name in smaller print, like it's so-and-so's book, but written by, or help. I can't remember the words it says, but
yeah, there's a variety of things out there. I've really stayed true to the meaning of ghostwriter. It's really important for me that it's not my story. I'm helping share it, but that's it. So there are instances where authors I've worked with have, mentioned my name in the acknowledgments, not in the capacity of a writer, but along the lines of, thank you for the support through this process. And sometimes I'm grouped in with family or friends or what have you. And that's never, ever expected, always appreciated, but never expected. But no, I absolutely work in capacity of non-disclosure from start to finish.
So you wouldn't know. So no one would know like your history of writing in terms of be like, oh, these are the 12 books I've written or the whatever.
No.
Yeah. You never know. Only and the other person knows. Right.
And whoever they choose to share.
Right. Of course. Yep. And so I'm curious too on this. Again, it goes a bit into the weeds, but when books are sold through a publisher, there is some sort of a royalty, right, to the author where, okay, you sold this many books, you get paid, and every book you sell, you get $2 more show up in your mailbox or whatever it is. Does that happen for the ghostwriter as well?
No.
Okay. So you're paid a fee. I see. So you get paid a fee by the person to write the book, and then that's the end of the thing.
And then that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if it goes to some 2 million copies sold or whatever, doesn't matter. Got it. Okay. Fair enough. And so here's another question, and that I want you to be able to respond to it. I feel like I have my own response, but I want to hear your take. I've had a few friends say, man, I've got this book to write. I feel like I've got a book to write, but I'm not, I don't want to go through this battle of writing it. It seems like daunting. I'm just going to hire somebody to write it. I'm going to write that check, and I'm going to have a book. And I have my own sense on this, but the thought of, man, that's kind of cutting the corner, and that's kind of cheating. If you hire somebody else to write your books, kind of cheating, because it's really not you doing that work. It's somebody else, and you're taking credit for it, even though it's your story, but you didn't do the work. You didn't write a book. Any thought there in terms of that mindset, that it's not, that it's a shortcut?
I don't think it's a shortcut, because if they don't hire someone to do it or coach them through it, or whatever capacity that looks like, then the story may never be told.
Right.
And I think the bigger disservice is that story not being shared or not being told. And so, yeah, we hear it a lot. And I think it's, like I said, it's unfortunate. Yeah, because, it's the person writing it, but that person lived it. That person's retelling it. That person's still experiencing it, or whatever the case is. So my thought to that is, what's a bigger disservice? Them taking a perceived shortcut, or not telling the story.
Right.
And I weigh on the other side.
Yeah. And that's kind of my take on it. Is it's like, I've got some favorite books that I just love. I talk about them on the show a lot. So The Alchemist is one. And would it matter to me that if, Paulo Coelho didn't write it every word himself, or he had a helper? I don't care. The story is so impactful to me that if he had kept that inside because he didn't have the skills, it's a skill. It's work to write and to write well. And if he didn't have that skill, or if he didn't have the courage or the fortitude to grind through late nights of writing, and that story never got out there, well, then the world's not impacted by the story. And so that's kind of my thought, is it's like, man, if you can get your story out there, get it out there, right? Because it's going to help. It's especially stories like, I don't know, I guess maybe any story's got it's going to impact people's lives potentially in some way, but stories that are real, like there's trauma involved, there's real life-changing stuff in there. It's not just some, I don't know, whatever, call it, fiction romance novel or something where it's just fluffy. But if there's meaning in it, man, get it out there, whatever it takes,
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is that your story could be the key to unlock someone else's prison. And don't know where I heard or read it. I've looked to give it credit somewhere. But that's always something that I lean on. Because telling your story is also that's almost scarier than the writing part.
Yeah, for sure.
Because a lot of the authors, especially the authors that I attract, if you will, just based on social work, is definitely is open the door to a lot of opportunity to share stories. So I think it just makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. The confidentiality piece they don't ever worry about. And there's lots of things that people tell me that they have never told anyone. And sometimes it makes the book, and sometimes it doesn't. But that, for a lot of the authors I work with, same thing with them, the clients that I also do the book coaching, just because I can only write so many books. But even with my book coaching clients, is that, then we get to decipher if it needs to be in there or not. But a lot of times they're telling me things that they've never shared, and that's scarier.
For sure. So I mentioned in the intro that you have your book, The Lightbulb Moments Journal, which became an Amazon bestseller. Talk about that. What is that book? And
so I wrote it during the pandemic, when everyone was not kind of locked up. We definitely felt locked up here. And a lot of people were talking about journaling. We were hearing a lot more people wanting to, mental health, but I still don't know how many years it'll be till we see the actual effect of what's happened. But, people started paying a lot more attention to their self-care. So yeah, there was, recipes and all these kinds of things that we talked about that trended during the pandemic, but journaling was one of them. And at the time, I had a community online that I did a lot of just mindset stuff with, just because I miss social work a lot of days. So I was, bridging kind of both worlds. And, a lot of them said, well, I want to journal, but I don't know how. Where do I start? I look at a blank page. So we just started doing journal prompts, and I just started kind of going into my social work vault of things that we used to, do with the youth or their families. And, someone said, why don't you put it in a book? And I thought, okay. And so it's what we did. And it's 100 some odd journal prompts. Some of them, make you dig a little bit deeper and pull back some layers, not just the what's my favorite movie? Write about it.
Right.
It's definitely coming from a little bit more professional space. Not that those are unprofessional, just coming from like a more, let's really dig into who you are type of prompt. So so we published December 2020 is when that book came out.
Fantastic. Have you written other books under your own name, under your own?
No.
That's your one? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you realize, my 2 cents is, you have an incredible story to write about.
I do. And for me, it'll happen one day. I think there's still big pieces of my life that are being written. And although, memoirs are one of my favorite types of books to write, they're probably my favorite books to consume. They're my favorite books to write and work with coaching clients. So there's definitely an opportunity already for memoir, just because I love memoirs because it doesn't need to be chronological. It's one, piece or several events in your life. But I feel like there's still maybe, stuff that still needs to be unpacked. And I'm still learning how, previous choices affected future decisions. And I'm an overthinker. So that's definitely part of it in there. But I will write it one day. Absolutely. It's just not my time yet.
Right on. Do you have, I'm curious, so I love to read and write as well. I haven't written any books, love to journal, and as a kid wrote a lot of stories, and just I've always been, my mom gave me a love of reading from a young age. And so love to read. One of my favorite fiction writers is Jack Carr. I don't know if you know Jack Carr, but he put it in Amazon best-selling, I'm sorry, he's got many bestsellers in the fiction adventure, sort of like a Tom Clancy style writer.
Okay.
But he talks about, when you follow his social media, he talks about his writing process, and he's got to be away from any distraction. So he has a certain laptop that has nothing on it other than one writing app, no internet capability, so can't get pinged or notified. And he sits and writes, that way, so that he's not distracted. And he goes to a certain place. Do you have any sort of a process in your writing style? Like, do you write in the morning? Do you write at night? Do you have things that you do that, like, I need this in order to be able to kind of do the magic stuff?
Yeah, I have a morning routine that I make a cup of coffee that I enjoy outside by myself, whether it be sunny or rainy or cold. It's just something about the fresh air. Then I have a 3-year-old yellow lab, so I get her up. We go for a walk, and then my writing day starts from then. I prefer to write earlier, so usually 10 a.m. on. And it's always done at my desk. It's always the same computer. If I find that I'm writing it to writer's block, because yes, writers and ghostwriters have writer's block, I'll sometimes switch to my iPad that has the pen, so I'm still able to transfer it to my computer later. But I find sometimes just interrupting that medium is really helpful. Or I have a favorite cafe that I'll there or the bookstore, and I'll just work there. Sometimes it's just the cafe is one. There's really great people watching. You can overhear conversations. So a lot of times that can spark different ideas or perspectives or things like that. In the bookstore, I just love wandering the shelves, because sometimes there's a title that'll jump out at you and think, oh, this would actually, I can work. Sometimes it's just a word, and it's like, this really fits. I can work with this. So, but other than that, I mean, I guess I'm pretty specific about those few things, but they're pretty simplistic things as well. And when I started, the first book I wrote was on a Chromebook. I couldn't afford a laptop at the time. So, for me, it's just, I made use of whatever, but now I have a pretty particular way I like to do things.
That's great. Do you find that, you mentioned writing on an iPad, do you find that pen and paper doesn't work just because it's too hard to, then you got to rewrite it? Or does pen and paper ever do something for you, or no?
If it's my own personal, I mean, I'm still a journaler, but I just find pen to paper I love for a variety of things. I love taking notes. A lot of my research is done pen to paper. But if it's something that, I'm working on a manuscript for, I just like the ability that it's just electronic. It's there already. I'll use the Notes app on my phone as well. I guess the advantage of Apple is we can combine all these things together. Right. But yeah, that's the only reason I don't use pen to paper for a manuscript.
Got it. Awesome. What's next for you, Catherine? What are you excited about? What are you focused on going forward?
Yeah, I'm working on a memoir right now for someone, which is really incredible. Her story's pretty powerful, and I'm excited for us to get this done and for her to get it out. Um, so that's my current thing. And professionally, I have two more books I'm doing already this year. Just continue really offering the book coaching services because that's really important to me. It's one thing to say, you have a wait list into 2025, 2026 to write books, which is great. Obviously, from a business standpoint, this is amazing. But I feel like I'm delaying stories.
Mm.
And I started offering the book coaching last year. That's a new component to my business. So, and that's been just incredible. I've been able to work with really incredible authors, and I don't write that. I'm really there as a cheerleader and a confidant, and feedback and suggestions and critiques, and that's just been really great because I've really been able to serve a lot more people. Versus the long wait list or the big price tag. I mean, it's not inexpensive to have someone to write your book either. So the book coaching has been something I'm really, really committed to continuing to just to see grow. There's something so special when someone's written their book and you see it, and they always send me a copy.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to order one, and I usually order a few, but just getting that copy and knowing that it's something that they were really, really scared to do, and hearing their excitement. I just finished with a book client a few weeks ago. His book was published, and I said, how does it feel? How does it smell? I always, flip the pages, and he said, I'm ready for book number 2. There's just something about that excitement that just drives me. So professionally, definitely with the book writing, my company handles all other types of writing, blogs, emails, things like that. It was something that I still wanted to continue to serve people with, but my time is definitely spent in the book world. And personally, I love to travel, so I've made a commitment to myself to take at least 7 or 8 vacations a year, and whatever that
Nice.
might look like, solo travel with friends or family. So that also really fuels my creativity.
Yeah, fantastic.
So it's been great. Mm-hmm.
Do you ever see, or do you have now foresee a time when you would have writers on your team, like people either that you're mentoring, but then are also helping to handle the workload and writing some of these books?
Yeah, I have a writing team now. They don't handle the book side of things right now, but they do the others. I love working with. I have a great writer on my team who did a little bit of intern with me while she was doing her journalism degree. Because when I started writing in the beginning, I wrote a lot for free just to be able to develop a portfolio and guest blogging and things like that. So I love being able to offer that opportunity as well to people just starting out. So I do envision eventually for people to also become, a lot of the ghostwriting process is the research process and the interview process, probably 50% of it, especially depending on, when we're talking about, instances of trauma, I need to be well versed on that subject. So a lot of that is the learning, not just the person's story, but really understanding what that looks like. And so I definitely would love to find ourselves in a place like that I could have researchers come on or interviewers come on and have a bigger part of the process. But we'll get there. Right now, I'm being selfish.
Right.
I'm still loving the journey so much, and I think I've proven to myself over the years that when I'm not happy, I'm prepared to shift. I'm prepared to make a move, whatever that might be. I struggle to use the word pivot. I feel like everyone's talking about it these days, but
Right.
I'm not afraid to make those tough choices. So as long as I'm still loving it, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Fantastic. Where can people find you and connect with your work?
Yeah, the best place is probably my website, which is catherinenikkel.com. And then I'm on most social media. I think that's the thing to do. Facebook is still my world of consistency, if you will. But thankfully for a unique spelling of my last name, Nikkel, you can find me just about anywhere with Catherine Nikkel, which is worked well in my favor.
Right on. Awesome. Catherine, it's been a great conversation. I so appreciate you sharing so openly. Your whole story is fantastic. I know it's going to touch the audience, and man, so many lessons to be learned in there. And so thank you for taking time and sharing your story. It's been great.
Thank you for having the platform to do that.
My pleasure. To our audience, thank you for taking time from your busy day to listen to the show. Always humbled that you do that. If you would write us a nice review, if you would leave a rating, share the program with a friend, all those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.